Is Netanyahu really unwilling to accept a lasting peace in the Middle East? Or are Israel's latest military calculations pointing to a much deeper strategy toward Iran? While Trump pushes for an end to the conflict with Iran, Netanyahu appears determined to keep the military option on the table, raising questions whether the two allies are heading in different directions. As Trump signals a desire to step back from another prolonged conflict, Israel's military preparations suggest that Netanyahu may still be preparing for a potential confrontation with Iran. Could Israel be prepared to act independently if Washington refuses to support another operation, with Netanyahu keeping open the possibility of a unilateral strike against Iran? Despite pressure for de-escalation, Israel continues to treat the Iranian threat as a central security concern, raising the question of what is preventing the Iran front from finally being closed. With the United States appearing increasingly cautious about another direct confrontation, is Israel preparing to face Iran on its own? And could that decision push the region toward another major war? Israel is preparing for the possibility of launching unilateral strikes against Iran, according to reports, as questions grow over how the conflict could develop in the coming days. Israeli broadcaster Channel 13 reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could launch an attack against Iran if the war between Washington and Tehran comes to an end, potentially putting Israel at odds with the United States. The Israeli Defense Forces are continuing to keep open the option of striking Iran without direct American involvement, according to the report, suggesting that Israel could be prepared to act independently if it believes further military action is necessary. Such a move could create a significant divide between Israel and the United States over the future direction of the conflict with Iran, particularly if Washington decides that military operations should come to an end. The development raises questions over whether Israel could continue fighting on its own if the United States seeks to bring the war with Iran to a close, potentially creating a new strategic challenge for the two allies. The Channel 13 report comes as the Trump administration faces growing pressure to end the Iran war, amid concerns over the wider regional consequences and the possibility of further escalation. This follows a report by CNN claiming that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff warned the Trump administration about the risk of further escalation, highlighting concerns within the U.S. military establishment over how the conflict could unfold. U.S. President Donald Trump faces another major challenge, this time over whether to bring the war with Iran to an end. Trump's top general has reportedly pushed for an off-ramp that could help bring the escalating war with Iran to an end. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane is reportedly concerned that further escalation could deepen the risks of the war, according to CNN. The U.S. general has also reportedly warned that air power alone could face serious limits if Trump chooses to escalate military operations against Iran. Dan Kane reportedly cautioned that expanding military options against Iran could ultimately backfire on Trump and his wider war strategy. The top general also reportedly raised his concerns with CIA Chief John Ratcliffe, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance. Dan Kane is also reportedly resistant to any potential ground invasion, warning against sending U.S. troops directly into Iran. However, Kane reportedly warned Trump that a prolonged war could further deplete America's already strained weapons stockpiles. The U.S. president is reportedly frustrated by the impact of the war on American munition supplies, according to CNN. Donald Trump rejected reports claiming the U.S. was running low on munitions during the conflict, dismissing the assessments as inaccurate. Trump said the United States possessed far more munitions than any other country and more than it currently required. Earlier, the Wall Street Journal reported General Dan Kane had warned senior officials about declining U.S. air defense interceptor stockpiles. Meanwhile, Qatar and Oman discussed diplomatic efforts aimed at implementing the recently announced U.S. Iran Memorandum of Understanding. Qatar urged all parties to pursue dialogue and safeguard freedom of navigation through the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. As diplomatic contacts resumed, Al Arabiya reported China worked with Pakistan to help revive U.S.-Iran negotiations. Axios reported that CENTCOM chief Brad Cooper also urged ending strikes around Hormuz after the campaign had reached its objectives. According to Axios, Cooper assessed that the operation had significantly degraded Iran's ability to conduct maritime attacks. Cooper reportedly said most designated military targets had already been exhausted during Operation Epic Fury, Axios reported. Without launching a broader new offensive, Cooper reportedly concluded that extending the bombing campaign would serve no meaningful military purpose, Axios reported. Meanwhile, the Department of War has reportedly revoked access granted to a senior U.S. Air Force official, raising fresh questions inside Washington. Former U.S. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall has reportedly been accused of leaking classified information, according to reports. The Department of War has provided no further details about the sensitive information that was allegedly leaked or how it was disclosed. The IRGC says foreign media have acknowledged Trump's defeat in the war with Iran, a propaganda claim that reflects Tehran's interpretation of the conflict. The IRGC says Washington failed to defeat the Islamic Republic either through war or propaganda, insisting Iran remains capable of setting the conflict's next terms. The Guards claim the recent agreements amount to an American surrender document, framing diplomacy as proof that U.S. pressure failed, a characterization Washington rejects. The statement credits revolutionary media with exposing what Tehran calls U.S. failure and countering Washington's narrative of battlefield success. Tehran says U.S. and Israeli forces did not achieve their stated war objectives, while U.S. officials continue to claim extensive damage to Iran's military capacity. The IRGC says Iran's military strength and negotiating power shaped the agreements now under discussion, especially those concerning the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials say the country entered negotiations from a position of strength, insisting that the final decision on war, peace, and Hormuz remains in Tehran's hands. IRGC statement said, and I quote, "World media, acknowledging Washington's failure to defeat the Islamic Republic, are clearly speaking of Trump's defeat and self-created trap in the war against Iran, and are even admitting that the agreements reached were nothing more than an American surrender document in the face of the realities on the ground and Iran's negotiating power." Unquote. Senior Iranian cleric Abdolnabi Musaffafard said Tehran was preparing to increase the range of its missiles to 15,000 kilometers, although he offered no operational details or evidence that such a weapon already exists. Speaking on August 7, Musaffafard said the extended missile range would enable Iran to strike the United States, using the claim to warn Washington that it could face direct consequences of future escalation. Musaffafard added that Iran's existing missile force could already reach Israel, which he described as roughly 2,000 kilometers away, highlighting Tehran's established regional strike capability before claiming a future intercontinental reach. Musaffafard said, and I quote, "We are preparing ourselves so that the American people, too, will see what it is like to be hit by missiles, and understand what it means to be left in blood and destruction." End quote. Musaffafard also said he hoped Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would be destroyed by Iranian forces, reinforcing the highly confrontational tone of his remarks toward both Israel and the United States.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.